Hello, everybody. Today we have a very special guest with us, an expert in his own field, one of a kind. He is Steve Rosenbaum, and Steve has been helping thousands of people with their training and learning and how to develop their training and learning. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much. I just want to give an idea to everybody who has not met you before. Steve is the CEO and founder of Learning Paths International. Steve has developed and led a network of partners in the US, Europe, China, Canada, and India. Learning Paths International is a training and development consulting firm that focuses on increasing speed to performance. Successful learning paths projects have been done for more than 400 functions and 50,000 employees, leading to an average reduction in time to proficiency of more than 30%. Steve also is an author of 7 books, including Faster, Cheaper, Better, How to Improve Any Learning Organizations, Up to Speed, Secrets of Reducing Time to Proficiency, and Learning Paths Increase Profits by Reducing the Time it takes to get employees up to speed. He is also a contributor to the Trainer's Portable Mentor, and he has published more than 100 articles and countless blog posts. Why don't you share these treasures with us today, Steve, and help everybody understand further what they're missing on when they're thinking about people's learning paths?
Well, when we look at a learning path, what we're talking about is this whole concept of how do you get people up to speed faster? This idea of proficiency, and not just, how do you line up a bunch of courses or pile on knowledge, but how do you get them performing at high speed? And the whole concept of a learning path is say, what is the fast way to get them there? What is that series of activities from start to finish that gets them up to speed as quickly as possible, as opposed to, if I put you 2 hours on a course, now you're doing great. Well, it takes more than that. So that's really a big concept.
So they can't play it by ear, right? Like they can't go with the flow. It has to be planned out, right?
Yeah. When you look at all the research about how people actually learn, 70 to 90% of it's all informal and it happens on the job. And we're saying, if we did that more intentionally, if we identified what people are actually doing and put it into a design path, we could get more people up to speed. We could take advantage of best practices, and it would just it shortens everyone's time and it costs less money. So that's kind of what we're doing here.
So of course, you're going to be teaching us more about this. We're going to have 100 questions for you.
Oh, good.
Why did you choose to call yourself the Learning Paths Guy?
That's a great question. I was trying to update my LinkedIn profile, and I went through all the videos of what do you do, and they're kind of saying, looking for some kind of hook. Because I've been doing learning paths so long, and so many people know me and know the books, they kind of think of me as the learning paths guy. So, well, why not put that? That's a little catchier than, CEO of so-and-so. It's like being the science guy or whatever. I just thought it was catchier, and so far no one's objected. So,
it's easier. It's easier to remember that you are the referral, the person to go to the referral point when somebody needs to learn more about the learning path. That's very smart. And what does a learning path actually mean, Steve?
Yes, one of the things that I talk about in my book about how to improve any learning organization is that there's a language in training. Everyone speaks about, everyone defines everything differently. And when I say learning path, people might think of curriculum or training plan or agenda. And so back about 20 years ago, I started trying to get people to get on the same page with me and say, why don't we say, when we talk about a learning path, this is what we mean. And the way I define a learning path is that it's a sequence of learning activities from the time you start to the time you become proficient. It's both the formal.
Can you say that again? Can you say that again?
Yeah, so it's everything
I
you go
see.
through from the time you start to the time you become proficient. And that allows us to
Wow.
kind of measure the time and everything. And it includes the formal, the informal, the social, the experiential, whatever it takes. And by defining it and mapping it out, we kind of eliminate a lot of this wandering around that really slows training down. So that's how we define it.
Are you saying that learning path is not just about a course or a program? You just mentioned formal, informal, whatever activities. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, one of the things I believe is true about training or learning is that learning is a process, not an event. That you go through a number of things. You think about anything you got good at, you didn't learn it in a seminar. You didn't learn it in a lecture. It took days, weeks. You think about learning to play tennis. You know,
Mm,
I can read a tennis book, but I don't learn how to play tennis from the book. I've got to go out there and I've got to hit a million tennis balls and saying, so we take a look at a learning path of what is all that stuff? What is that process? How do we make it more consistent? How do we learn from other people? One of the ways we improve things is just to ask experts the question, I know what you need to know, but how did you actually learn to do it?
yeah.
They'll say, well, that's a different question, totally.
Mm,
And then you can then go back and say, well, if you did it again, what wouldn't you do? What was a waste
ah,
of time? And all of a sudden you've got this thing you can put together that the master says this is how you actually learn this. Um, and this is where you're wasting your time. And that's how we
mm.
get at some of the learning paths.
So it's not just about having a presentation, an e-learning platform, group of people, and you deliver it.
Mhm.
That's not it. That's not exactly what the
Yeah.
learning path is intended to mean.
Yeah. You may do an e-learning program, you may read a book, you may attend a workshop on the path, but it's just one activity of many going from start to finish.
Mm,
Think about, how many times people take a course and 3 weeks later, they don't remember any of it.
yes.
Well, what could we have done in this 3 weeks to reinforce it, to make it more real life? How could we have delivered it differently so that, the point of it is not getting the training done, but to really improve people's performance. Because you talk about what do CEOs care about? They really don't care about how fancy the training is and what you actually did. They want to know, what are these people now doing on the job that's different? Are they, performing better? Are they safer? Those kinds of things. And it helps you start to talk about the language that they want to talk about and elevates you up in the company, as opposed to just, a training person down in the training department.
Don't you think it's one of the hardest things to unprogram and reprogram people in order to change their proficiency levels?
Well, it takes work and it takes thinking and one of the things that, excuse me, I would say is the the way we do things is often people say, I really think that way. I think,
Mm,
people do learn that way. The problem is that they don't actually do that. And you look at their programs or what they do, they're doing a more traditional, school type thing, or
mm.
putting people in front of lectures, or here's your 2 hours of e-learning, as opposed to we know that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, that's just knowledge. Um, just to broaden our listeners, imagination,
Mhm.
because I'm personally curious. When you say formal, informal, everything that is included on the on the way as they are improving their proficiency, what are like some examples that you can think top of mind of informal activities that
Yeah,
you would
yeah.
include for your groups in order to improve their proficiency, Steve?
And again, I go back to the fact that, if we have 4 people in the room, we have 10 definitions of that. But I would say most of informal is the stuff that happens on the job. It
Mm-hmm.
might be the on the job training or the hands-on. It's sitting you're in a call center and you sit next to someone and you say, how do you enter this? That's informal learning. And you just have to hope that the person you ask knows the right answer. But it's all that stuff that's happening on the job and it tends to not be structured. But it's where
Uh,
you're doing all your learning, really. Or when
Are
you go
you
back
suggesting
after,
like really asking them, not testing them? You're really asking them, how do you do this? Like
yeah, no, I just, you went to that class with me. How did they say to do that? And to the person,
really like genuinely asking them,
yeah,
not trying to impose that they're testing them.
well, that would be informal learning. It's not by
Informal.
design,
Gotcha.
but it's
Okay, very
informal.
smart.
Uh, and there's just a lot of it. If you think about how you learned just about everything, all the people around you are teaching you things,
All the time.
and some of it's really good and some of it's not so good, and some of it's absolutely wrong. And you know, you know, you see that happen where people learning from each other sometimes, they both heard it wrong, or oh, don't worry about what they said in that class. Here's I'll show you how to go around the
Yeah.
system. And
Yeah.
so we really don't want you doing that. But
Yeah.
so
That's very interesting. I
I-
never
I'll,
thought
gi-
of it that way. Did you know?
I'll give
I
you a
never
quick.
thought of it like asking somebody with the intention of teaching them when you actually know the answer. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Well, let me give you
That's very nice.
a quick story. We're down
Please.
at Disney, and we're in the call centers where they're taking reservations for the resorts, and we're listening in, and this guy is on the phone, and he says, I'd like to, I'm great that you're coming down here. I'd like to offer you this, Disney video that we have that really shows you everything. It's not really worth it, but would you like one? And we had to go ask him, what are you doing? He says, well, to, to get a good score on the test, I have to mention it to people, but I don't know how to enter it in the system. And so if I do it this way, I can offer it, get the check mark, and I never have to enter it.
Yeah.
So on the job, he's informally learned now how to do the job in a way that suits him and gets him the right score, but it's not what you really want. That's, people can teach themselves all sorts of things
Yes.
informally, and it not isn't some of it's good and some of it's not.
Yes. Yes. Totally. You can't deal with people. I mean, older people or adults like their kids. You
Yeah.
can't really give them so much direction. All right. So like out of the many coaches and trainers that you meet every day, how many of them are actually aware of this concept of learning path, Steve?
I'm surprised at how many there are. I run into them all the time. The majority of the business I'm getting these days, a lot of times come from people say, I've been following your writing for years, and I'm now at this new place. And will you come in and help us? And so, so it's hard to know. But there are a group of followers that I have, and it's probably in the tens of thousands.
Oh, wow.
But there are millions of trainers out there, and and there's some people who have heard about it, and of course they define it differently, or they say, okay, that's what I'm doing. And, and
Your own
there's some that have used the thing differently. In computer training, there's a concept of a learning path that's a little different. It came all along a little later than we started using it, but so they think about it that way. So it's kind of a mix out there, but I'm always surprised, and in particular, I'm surprised when larger companies took my book and implemented it
Mm-hmm.
and never talked to me. So it's just surprising.
It is. It
Uh,
is.
and I was doing a speaking engagement in China, and this woman came up to me and says, Steve, you're really well known in China. I go, I don't know anybody in
Celebrity in
China.
China? Oh my goodness.
I'm probably known by
They didn't
more
let you
people.
know.
I have a partner in China who's so terrific. He has done he's sold probably more books than I have and met more people, and he's really responsible for people in China knowing who I am, and
Wow.
I've only been there once, but there's of course if 10,000 people in China know you, that's not a very big part of the population, but
Like that's still a good number.
in the training world, I'm pretty well known there.
Wow. Wow. What about the people? What about the people in the West? I know you're trying to be diplomatic here, but like, is the majority or the minority aware of the concept of what is?
You know, I think there's the people who, you know, are involved with some of the associations,
Yeah.
like ATD and ISPI.
Yeah.
Most people know who I am.
Okay.
There's a lot of people in training who come up through the ranks and really don't have any formal training and training. They don't really know who I am.
So,
But
so,
the
so
people
you
who
being the
are,
representative, speaking of, you're being the representative of this concept,
yes, but
depends on their background.
yeah, but the people who you know are involved in their own development as trainers and everything, it's a lot of people know me there.
Yeah. What about the concept itself of the
The
idea?
concept,
What is a learning path?
you know,
I'm asking people you meet, not of course, like, I mean, I'm asking
yeah,
out of who you meet.
you know, it's more than I'm always surprised at how many people do. They don't have a number, and you know, and also we deal a lot of times at a senior executive level, and they're not training people, and so they typically haven't heard it, but it's been referred to them by someone else. Okay, and I'm just surprised at how many, you know, we've been at it for 20 years or more, but I'm still surprised how many people have.
Yeah.
I haven't been asked for a reference now in close to 10 years.
Oh, wow.
They'll go, oh yeah, well he wrote the book on that, so that we don't have to check that out.
Mm.
And I would say the people in training, you know, write a book. It gives you a lot of credibility. It's worth
Yeah,
the effort.
absolutely. That's the way. What's your methodology, Steve, in building a robust and effective learning path? How do
Yeah,
you know, how would you know it's working? It is effective. What's your
yeah, no,
methodology?
that really is the core of what we do is we call it a methodology. It's a consulting methodology. Um, I patterned it a little bit. You know, we run into some of the big consulting companies like the Accentures and the Deloittes. And the one thing I see from them is that they have a methodology for everything. They really have a nail down of what they do step by step. And so when they go into an engagement or they bring a new person in, they're not making it up as they go along. And uh, the methodology we use is patterned a lot after the way you work on quality improvement. Okay, it's a continuous process. And what we do is first of all is that we identify who we want to work on. And what we like to do is do kind of job by job. You know, and what are the jobs that have the highest visibility? Who cares most about them? We do that. From there, we form a learning path team of stakeholders to work with us. And the very first thing we do is we define proficiency. What does it mean to be fully up to speed? You know, it's a fairly robust process. And it's in many companies, the first time they ever really looked at it. And we get people in the room, and not only haven't they done it, but when you do it, they don't agree. And so what you find is that if we don't agree on what proficiency is, well, no wonder nobody's kind of where they should be. And so we define that clearly. And then what we do instead of what we traditional kind of training is where you start with a blank piece of paper and try and figure out how you get there. You say, no, what we want to do is to look at people today are getting there somehow. What is that? So we map out the current process. And that's where the quality thing sort of comes in. So how are people getting there? We look at that and then we apply what we know about accelerated learning and change management and process improvement. Say, where are our opportunities for improvement? And we like to find what we call quick hits, which are things that you can implement quickly that really don't cost a lot. And you would be surprised that the first time you do a learning path, you'll find 60, 70, 80 really good quick hits to ramp up that learning path. Of, you know, so this is what we did today. Here are 70 or 80 learning quick hits. Plus, then we now can build a new learning path that incorporates those. And again, we're going from day one to proficiency. That's our measurement. We can also do some measurement about, well, how long does it take people today? Well, today it takes, you know, they go through training and they training's done in 6 weeks, but they really don't become proficient for 18 months.
Mhm.
And we say, okay, that's our measure. We're gonna reduce the 18 months. Okay,
Mm.
then what we do is we build whatever training we need to fill out the learning path and implement it. So in very high level, that's what the method is.
So when you say we have to first define and agree of what the proficiency is that they need to reach, what
Mhm.
if you disagree? What if there is a situation where you and your client disagree? What would you do in that case?
Well, basically, we're all in the same room, we're all in the same call, and we hammer away at it until we can come up with some agreement. And in some cases, that's one of the reasons why these kinds of projects are most successful when you have a high-level executive sponsor. Someone who at the end of the day can say, well, you might say it's 10 and you might say it's 15. I'm
Mm-hmm.
now going to say it's 12. Or we may have
Mm-hmm.
some empirical data somewhere that will help us. You know, if companies have tracked performance really well, you'll be able to come up with some data that will help you.
Yeah.
In some cases, you can say, well, for our purposes, the first time around, let's just flip a coin, we'll pick one. And once we run it around once, we'll have a better indication because we
Yeah.
don't have that measure.
Yeah.
We need to set the target and then the next time around, we'll make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to
And
just get started somewhere to
yeah, we're
get
not,
a real feel.
it's the idea of not looking for perfection. You're looking for improvement
Exactly.
here.
Yeah.
And, but it just, a lot of times it just takes some time before allowing people to have the discussion they never had before to come
Yeah.
up with, well, what do you guys think? So if you have the right people in the room, they can work
Yes.
it out. Where it
And
doesn't
so,
work is when the trainer comes up with a number and says, this is the number.
ah,
And one says, no, it's not the number, it's this, and the other says that. No, they got to be in the room and they have to own the number.
so having the right people together, putting the right people together, and then extending the conversation when you don't reach an initial agreement, and then starting to use maybe further ways like estimation methods or something.
Mhm.
And worst case, first you just give it a go with the best guess, go with it, and then in the second
Yeah,
iteration, it improves.
in some cases, you have to go with the best guess because the data just isn't there.
It isn't there. Yeah. Gotta start.
They've never tracked it, and you say, well, this is the best we can do, but we'll get better at it.
Yeah. Once we get
Yeah.
started, gotta get started to get better.
It's like when you work on quality, you don't try and go from where you are to perfection.
Exactly.
You say, we're
Exactly.
gonna make a big jump here, and then we'll come back and get better.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, one of the things that happens, a lot of training is about problem solving,
Mhm.
and it's problem solving is difficult because you got to tell people they do things wrong, and now we're going to fix it. But if I say, no, what this is process improvement. We're going to look at where we are, and we're going to get better, and then we're going to get better again. That's
Yeah, I love that.
much
Yes.
easier to sell to people. And it's a little like the movie Top Gun, where they come in and say, you're the best of the best. We're going to make you better. So even if they think they do things great, that's great. Well, then we start at a different point, but we can still get better.
Yeah. You reminded me of this, like inkjet. It's like layers of
Mhm.
improvement. It's like, it's like learning again, and learning is layers of improvement. You don't go from 1 to 10. It's got to be gradual.
Mhm.
That's the essence of learning. When you say quick hits and when you say we measure the proficiency level, you're talking about KPIs, you're talking about templates, checklists, and all things of that
Yeah,
sort.
at the learning path level where we're building right now, we're at a little higher level than, say, learning objectives. Those are down a
Yes.
little bit. You'll eventually create some learning objectives as you build pieces of the training.
Yes.
But at this level, we're really talking up a level, and KPIs are what we're talking about. We're talking about a performance. A little bit is like performance goals, except these aren't goals. This is kind of this where you have to be. And where this kind of translates is they say, this is the level of performance people have to be at when our training is done.
Mm.
Okay. So what is a passing score? Well, a passing score is 100%.
Hmm.
Said people have to be here. If they're not there, we're not done, then we have to do more. As opposed to saying, 85% is good.
Hmm.
So if you're in the call center and you have to answer customer questions, and we say, well, you've got to get the right answers. Well, we have to train you to get the right answers, as opposed to saying, well, you got 85% on your test, which means you can now give 15% wrong answers to customers. Well, we don't want to do that, but
We don't want to do that.
if you think about how many people do testing in call centers, 85% is a pretty good score. And we're saying, if you set the bar where it has to be, 100% is the score.
I love that. So it's like we're not done when the 2 hours or like the
Mhm.
2 months are finished. We are done when you get it. When you get it.
When we're there, you're
When
done.
you change.
Yeah.
You're there. Exactly.
When you're filling people's prescriptions, it's when you get them all right, not when you get 90% of them right.
Exactly. I love the idea of 100%. Although
Mhm.
it looks from the outside, it looks like perfectionist. It's not. It's gradual.
Mhm.
Because probably by the time you hit 100, there will be again further room for improvement.
Yeah. Well, you can change the bar. You can say,
Oh, yes.
I'm going to get, here's 100 medications you've got to get right. Now the next bar, you got to get the next 100.
There you are. Yeah, there you go.
Or you have to improve your speed of answering. You can answer customer questions 100% right, but you can't take that long to do. You got to do it quicker. So there's other, you can go from kind of a required level to a top performer level as a
Yeah,
second.
exactly.
And that's kind of the way we look at it. Instead of saying, we're going to take it from 0 to top performer, that's too big of a jump.
Yes.
We're going to take you up to, first of all, to a required level. And when you get there, then we'll get you better.
Yeah.
And when you get there, we'll get you better. But, I use the analogy a lot of you want to learn baseball and you're in little league. And so you want to be a top performer. So we'll start throwing you major league pitching. Well, you're never going to do it that way. And you'll probably hurt yourself. And, so that's just kind of what I look at it.
So you've been into a lot of corporations. You've seen a lot of situations. What happens if you step into a company and you can see for yourself that these people will probably need 18 months to get to where they need to get? And then you find like a decision maker, one of the top, level management team, objecting to this, and suggesting like why all of this time we want to finish this in 2 months. So when you are facing that kind of, unrealistic, underinformed, response, what'd you do?
Well, the first thing is to talk to them about how long it takes today. Because and also get to think it's not the length of the training, it's the length of the time to proficiency. It's not necessarily the time in the classroom, but it's all that informal time. So today it's 18 months and, we've got them for 3 weeks in the classroom and then they wander around for the rest of the time. We're saying, well, our big opportunity is to take all that wandering around time and shrink that. There may be a way to eventually get it down to 2 months. But the first thing we need to do is figure out what's happening there and see, is there a way to do that? And it typically there's a lot of quick hits that just are very obvious and things start to get better. And part of the role of the learning paths person is to kind of educate the boss about how people learn and what's realistic. And you can say you want it, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. This is a 10-pound jar. You can only put so much stuff in it. You can want more to go in there, but it doesn't go in there. You gotta make some adjustments.
Did you ever try going with what they say until they try and see for themselves that their initial suggestion was not realistic and then take it from there? Did you ever try that?
Well, we're working with the team and with the boss as we go along. And if they really feel involved, and they're putting their ideas, they'll see what they're doing and what's realistic and what isn't. And we'll talk to people on the job, and sometimes it's getting people around and saying, it just takes this amount of time. And I'll give you an example of it's just like going back to hitting tennis balls. Some things require a certain amount of repetition before you really get
Exactly.
it. Okay. And you're going to want to get it in 2 times, but no one ever has done that. It just doesn't work. It
Nothing
can't.
happens in 2 times. Yeah.
Now, where we can make things faster is that we can schedule the 10 times so they happen quicker, as opposed to just over time it's going to happen. And
Yeah.
typically what happens is that repetition happens when it kind of happens as opposed to being scheduled. And so we show
Yeah,
people, here's how
exactly.
you do it faster. We'll get better. If your 2-month period is just arbitrary, that doesn't really work well. You can say what you want, but it just doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
And part of the
Yes.
role of becoming better in this business is to be able to really take people through that and say, this is what really is involved with it. And there's some things that we can do that get better and faster. Sometimes you need to say, well, the one way to do it is we need to talk about reshaping how the job is done. Or maybe there's some other things that are going on that are not training related that are really holding things up. And we'll get those people involved. When you talk with the performance improvement people, they do deal a lot with that other side. And they'll tell you there's a lot of things that go on besides training that will relate to how long it takes. And, there are a lot of times compensation issues. I mean, the key to it is to get managers to spend more time with their people developing them. But if they're being incentivized to not do that, the big boss needs to see that and say, okay, we need to change their incentives. And that can't happen, but that's a little higher level of consulting.
You mean it was a power of pull, not push, right?
Yeah, and it's just a matter of how your own credibility that builds over time and having people believe what you say.
Yeah, absolutely. And that counts. That definitely counts.
So with 5 years experience in the business, you have a certain level of credibility. With 40 years, you have a lot different level of credibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And on that note, does a learning path need to be customized every time you go to a new group, or does it need to be customized with each and every unique individual, Steve? How realistic is that?
Yeah, the way we look at it is we're really doing it job by job. Okay.
What do you mean?
And, for example, we'll do all the latex operators, the guys who run those machines. Okay, that's a job. We'll do it with all the salespeople. Okay. Now there may be different levels of salespeople, and say we're gonna do it with all the new salespeople coming in, or the people who sell this product line, but a whole job, as opposed to, we're gonna do team building, or we're gonna do we're gonna teach a task. We really look at it job by job. Okay. And like I said before, we want to look at the ones that are big and important. In a call center, we want to look at those the reservation agents down at Disney. Say they've got 700 of those people. Let's work on that job. Let's see how we get those people up to speed faster.
So is it safe to have the same learning path so long as this group of people belong to the same job? Or do you still have to think further on and customize it from one sales group to the other sales group, from one accounting group to the other accounting group in real life?
Yeah, well, it depends on how different the jobs are.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. We did one for people who maintain big semi trucks, and they have levels of technicians of what they can do. They have a tech 1, a tech 2, a tech 3, tech 4. So what you're doing is you're doing a path for each of those. But the way it gets set up we'll do tech 1. That's the new people up to this level. Now all the tech 2s have to have mastered everything in Tech 1. And now we'll say, how do you get from Tech 2 to Tech 3?
Mm,
And we do it that way. What you do find in the company when you're doing a lot of learning paths is there are activities that multiple jobs can do or need to do. And so you're not always doing everything from scratch. An example would be job shadowing. Let's say, and I want you to go to the claims department and shadow what they do for a day.
Yeah.
And there are maybe 5 jobs that could do that job shadow. And once we develop that job shadow, we can place it on each path. Okay. We don't really get down to we don't design it for every person, but this is what we actually do to customize it. If you lay it out for the person, say, who knows the least, or say we'll take people coming in, say, here's the person we're hiring who probably knows the least. We'll do a complete path for that person, start to finish. Now, if I have someone who's further along, has more experience, we'll sit down with them and we'll start crossing things out.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
so we're not going to build
yeah.
anything new for them. We're just going to cross things out. Well, you already know how to do that one, okay? Or we can test them out. With sales, you'll get people, you get people who are brand new and people with 30 years experience. Well, there is a common element to some of it, but you can say, oh, let's just see what you don't need. And so you get a nice individual customization without building multiple paths.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And the more you go up in the ladder, the more it becomes necessary to have these individual customizations, you think, Steve, because they will be influencing more people?
Well, yeah, it's just, it becomes, there are fewer numbers of those people as you go up.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I'll give you the example of when you bring a very experienced person in.
Yeah.
And you say, well, we're going to do a learning path for that person. We start by saying, what would be impossible for that person to know or be able to do because they've never worked here before?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a way of doing things. We have programs. Okay. We do a budget a certain way, and we're able to build a learning path for them that just strictly focuses on the stuff that they could not possibly know. I've been a manager for 30 years, but you're using SAP here for your inventory control. I've not seen that before. Okay, we'll wait that training for you.
Yeah, yeah, to fill in a certain gap, to cover a certain gap. And when you're doing that, are you leaning more on their strengths or their weaknesses, Steve? So is it when you're building a learning path, your methodology is building their strengths and focusing
Well,
on
we're
their
trying to say,
weaknesses,
what are they?
other way around?
What are they missing? What do they need to be able to become proficient in the job? And
yes, it's job based.
it's
the
not
end
really
goal.
strengths or weaknesses. It's really you got to learn to do this. You got to learn to do that.
Yeah, regardless if it's a strength or if it's not a strength, it has to become a strength.
But I would say,
Gotcha.
the majority of the ones we work on are, your frontline people, the people I always call the people who do the work.
Yeah. With
The
the
sales
clients,
people and the customer service people and
customer
the
service.
people who are in the manufacturing plant and down in the warehouse. And that's where I prefer to work. When you get up into executive levels, it gets fuzzier.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of times you know what those people are doing, and there's usually, maybe 1 or 2 of those people. And where if I was working down in the warehouse, I've got 100 of those people. It's just more fun for me to work on those people.
Do you think people in the like top management are actually coachable? No, I mean, that's the wrong question. Do you think that they're open to being coached, or you think people in the lower levels in the company hierarchy are more open to being
Well,
coached.
if I'm bringing in someone or I'm looking at developing them, as long as I'm focused on the things that they don't know and can't do, but need to do, if they don't, the whole idea of we're going to make you a better leader and all that, it's a little fuzzier, and that's not really where we're working. But an executive who's coming in and doesn't know the systems and the processes that are in place, they're going to want to know that stuff.
Yeah, they better know that stuff.
They're going to see that, and they need to know where the resources are and who to talk to for what. And if you're building a path around that, they're going to be engaged.
Yeah.
If you're going to go back and try and give them leadership 101, they're not going to be engaged.
Of course, yeah. Yeah. Even if they need leadership one-on-one, they're not going to be engaged.
Well, yeah, it's and who's going to teach it to them is another story. And
yeah.
And the trainer the facilitator who's got 5 years experience and has never been a manager is going to have a hard time teaching people leadership skills.
Yeah.
Just is.
Yeah, true. So I'm particularly interested in your vision of how the future of learning paths will evolve. So your insights, I'd love to know more about them, about how the shaping of the learning paths could evolve. Steve.
Yeah.
What is your, vision of it?
That's just a little, to be honest, at my age, I'm not looking at a lot of visioning at this point. I'm more visioning winding down than winding up. It's just a normal thing. You get to a certain age and you're no longer empire building. I've been trying to get some more international partners. I'd like to write some more books. But I don't have this grand plan at this point. If I was 20 years younger, I would have a grand plan. But I'm not 20 years younger. I might look 20 years younger.
You look 20 years younger, just to let you know.
Hopefully. But I'm just at the age where I'm not thinking a lot about that stuff. I'm thinking more about winding down.
Well, even while you're sitting on your own and meditating or thinking, wouldn't you be having any thoughts about how things can change with the evolution of technology, the evolution of people behavior? Are you getting any thoughts at all about how things could be,
Well, I still think there's a lot of room for people to start doing things more the way that we're doing things at learning paths. I do try and keep in touch with all the technologies and use it where it's appropriate. I talk to people a lot about doing cost-benefit analysis on some of the technology and saying, what is the best use for that technology? Just because you have it, it could be expensive, it could be hard to develop, or it could be the absolute right solution. And to be able to look at situations and say, here's the tool that I need. And I do have people look at that. And in the past, we've done some grids where we're doing like a cost benefit analysis on different methods. And, there's a time and place to put people in a classroom. And there's a time when that's just a waste of time and you should do something else. E-learning has its benefits and it certainly has its limitations.
Yeah.
And you want to do some things. I've played around with some AI stuff and again, a lot of that is better on content delivery. And when you get into the training of, how do I get you to develop a skill of some kind where it requires coaching and practice, a lot of times it still requires an expert watching you and giving you feedback.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that doesn't happen enough. So
it's you said enough. It doesn't happen enough. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen enough. And You know, I've been involved in programs now where we're trying to develop people to do more mentoring, but to actually know what that means and what you should do, you know. Uh, and we get into that thing. Anytime you mention the word, everyone's got a different vision in their head about what it means.
Yeah.
And I've been doing some interviewing the last few weeks about what is a mentor. And I've interviewed 20 people and I now have 30 definitions. And
Which
say,
means
well,
like
okay,
everybody has more than one definition.
so we can make some improvement by getting everyone on the same page, and then we'll develop people to do that.
Mm.
Um,
Do
you know,
do you think technology will service or a learning path or like the development of learning paths and how people get there to where they want quicker? Or do you think we need to add more of a human touch while
well,
developing?
kind of where learning paths come in with technology is
Mm.
that technology just doesn't come with the content.
Mm.
It doesn't come with the direction. It's really good at delivering it. You take something like um, an e-learning program. Well, there's no content in it. Someone has to develop, they have to decide what goes in.
Yes.
And then once you do that, now you can then go build the e-learning.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we do is we get things down on paper and then migrate it into where it belongs.
So,
And
are you, so I mean, with the debate of building courses using AI, you are suggesting that technology is a good channel and period. People will need to sit with people and know what's going on and have the conversations and do the work for this to be really successful. Is that what you're
yeah, I mean,
suggesting?
you can use AI to help you write some things, to give you some ideas. Um, but it doesn't do that. Just what we talked about, AI has a difficult time getting executives to agree on what proficiency is. Okay, that requires a skilled facilitator and someone with a big stick to make people behave
Yeah.
to do it. And AI isn't at that point yet. Maybe
Yeah.
one of their robots could do that, but you know, going back to the old days, you know, drawing programs are great. The only problem with drawing programs is they don't come with any talent.
Mm,
You don't have any artistic talent. Those
mm.
programs aren't necessarily all that helpful. I mean, you can get a ways, but you still need to learn how to draw, and you need to know what colors go with what to make that stuff really come to life.
Yeah. And I mean, this human factor is major. So
I'll tell you one other thing about technology. We
yes,
get
please.
this all the time. It's about technology training.
Mm,
And what I have people think about is that when you install a new technology, it isn't just how it works that you have to train. It actually changes how people work.
mm.
It completely changes their job. And if you don't change the new job or train the new job, the technology training will fail.
Oh,
So I'll give you an example of that.
yes, please, for
Um,
everybody to.
we were working with with one of the world's largest travel companies, and they were going to put in a new customer relationship uh, software that does
Mm,
all the bells and whistles and customizes email and does just everything you'd want. And the guy is doing the training, showing that you enter this here and you enter that here, and then let's say we're going to do a custom email, you go and get your customer data and you plug it in here, and the hand goes up and
mm,
says, "Where's the customer data?" And the guy goes, "Well, don't you collect that stuff?" No, we've never done that before. So what happens is
mm.
you have to go back and into the sales training is to incorporate how you ask for
Yes.
questions that will go into the customer database. And it took them almost 2 years to gather enough data so they can now use that program. So the thinking, anytime you do new technology, so we're going to do AI. Okay. Well, how does my job change? What am I doing
Mm,
differently every day? Now I need to train you in that, not just how to use AI, but I need you to train me on the new job. My other example of that is there's a reason why since 1980, people are still using Microsoft Word like a typewriter. They're spacing over the center. It's
True.
because it was never incorporated into how they work.
Yeah.
So they may have been taught some features, and it's just overwhelming with features and you forget them all. But if
Mm.
someone actually said, here's how you build a presentation. Let's do some presentations. Let's practice. Now they're pretty good at it. And so when we talk technology training, that's what we're always thinking about is you're asking people to do a job differently now.
Entirely. It's like
Entirely.
it will
And
have its
if
effect.
you haven't defined that and you aren't planning to train people in that, your technology training will fail and the program will fail.
And people will get frustrated because they put time and
Oh,
effort
yes.
into it.
A program like SAP
Mm.
creates havoc in companies. And one reason it creates havoc is the fact that they're not training all the new jobs it's creating. Uh, I was involved with one where, the trainer's going, right here, it's going to give you all this real-time data to help you improve your budgets. And this always happens. The hand goes up and says, we've never done budgets here before. So I got to train you on and it means they have to decide how we're going to do budgets and what they're going to look like, and train on that using the tool. And now it's worthwhile. Otherwise, it's got no value
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise,
now we got all our
it's
data
wasted.
sitting over in it, and we can't use it for anything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Every step has to be built on a solid foundation
Yeah.
for it to make sense
So
for the
that's what's
learner.
going on with technology and where at.
Yeah.
I tend not to get involved with specific programs because they end up, if we use ones people already have, that's fine. But to get them to use something new has to go through the
Mhm.
IT department, which is the
Okay.
biggest black hole in any company. It can be years before
Yeah.
anything comes out. So this is really a great program we'll incorporate and use. And good, we'll send it over to IT for evaluation. Well, we just, there's 2 years we're not going to see back again. It doesn't work. And so I've stayed away from that stuff.
Yeah. And like you say, every department, every function will have its own ways of, you know, influencing how this
Mhm.
learning path will or will not, turn out the way you want it to turn out as the person who's created it. So you got to get everybody's buy-in and given all
Yeah,
of
and I would
these
say that the key to it all is having a project champion, which is, we talk about quality improvement, how they work, they always talk about a project champion. And that's got to be someone who's at a high level, has a financial interest in the outcome, and really wants to do things.
Can you give us more information about, define for us more, Steve, what's the definition of a project champion in that case?
Well, we did one with a mortgage company, and they had 4 different sales divisions, and there was a vice president on top of each one, and they all sat around deciding who was going to go first. And they all looked around the room and said, "This guy's going to go first. He's always after. If he doesn't, it works. That's great." So the person that other people look as a someone they want to follow, uh,
Okay.
as high up in the organization as you can get them.
Someone with good history.
If the CEO wants to be the project champion, that's great. It's someone who can make a decision, who can allocate some resources, who can mitigate some arguments. We don't want to have to go outside the stakeholder group to get a lot of approvals. We want those people sitting in the room with us.
Available.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily a lot of time, but you know, the ones that have
Available when needed.
had the senior vice president sitting in, that's a project champ. And then I want to say that I'm the one who wants this done.
Someone wants this done, exactly.
Uh,
It's in their best interest to get this done.
I always use the analogy of the way my father would always do things. He wouldn't say you have to do anything. He just always said, you don't have to do it, but you really should. So when the president of the company says, you don't have to do this, but you really should. Well, it gets done.
Yeah, it
Okay.
gets done. Yeah,
If
love that.
a lower level supervisor says that, it doesn't get done. It's just that kind of a thing. And so whatever you're working on, let's say you're working on a leadership program.
Mhm.
Okay. I would want someone sitting in the C-suite as my project champion for something like that. Someone who's going to say, we're setting the
Why
culture,
not?
we're setting the culture of our company around leadership. This is a senior level
Oh, yeah,
decision.
it
I want
defeats
a
the
person
purpose.
to say, I've thought about this and this is what I think, and this is where we're going to take the company. Now implement this thing. That
Mm,
will work. Um, when the line managers get together to build it, it's not going to work because they can't.
yes,
It's just the wrong level.
yes, exactly.
Um,
Being wise when you choose people who will actually really influence other people.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've done some manufacturing, and a number of times the project champion has been the senior safety person.
Oh,
Okay, and say we will do this because it's not safe not to do this.
ah,
And I'm not certifying this and I'm not certifying that unless you get this done. You know, uh, a VP of operations kind of thing. And in some ways it's hard for people to say, I've got to get those people, but I think with any kind of training, if you're trying to do everything bottoms up, you just don't have the authority and the budgets and
yeah,
to
it,
get things
it
happen.
gets stuck.
It gets stuck. You want
Yeah.
to say, who around here could say you really should, but you don't have to, and things get done? That's the guy I
Ah,
want.
I love that one. Yeah.
That's who I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has a lot to do
Influential. A
with your
truly
own,
influential person.
yeah, and it has a lot to do with your own, credibility and experience and all that. Um, just a quick story. In one of my books, in my Up to Speed book, I was talking about my visit to China, and
Hmm.
it was all around credibility.
Mm.
And I talk about that there's three levels of credibility in this training business. The first level is, you want to do things and people are telling you what they want done. And you probably experienced it. Oh, yeah, that's great. You have a great idea, but no, here's what you're going to do. That's level one. Then you've been around for a while, and it might be 20 years or something like that. And all of a sudden, it'll switch, and people say, you're the expert. You tell me. And you probably experienced some of that. When did that happen? But now I've got I can make different things happen. And I
Yes.
feel when I went to China that one time, I had finally reached the third level, and I gave a speech to 1,500 people at the Chinese Society of Training Development. I was one of the keynote speakers there, and my partner there had set up a really large booth. They were selling some books, and he had like 19 college interns working
Hmm.
working in the booth for him.
Wow.
And these three young girls who were interns came up to me and said, "Mr. Steve, I want to be like you when I grow up."
Ah,
And I
isn't
said,
that
"Well,
amazing?
okay, that's level three.
That's level 3.
When
Role
people want
model.
to be like you when they grow up, you can get a lot of things done.
You can get a lot of things
Or
done.
you feel really old. I don't know which.
No, you can get a lot of things done.
But
Let's stick with that
that's level three.
one.
I want to be like you when I grow up.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what kind of what more can anybody ask for?
Yeah. So when you talk about project champions, you got to
And that kind of people.
evaluate your own level of credibility and what can you ask for. And sometimes you need an internal coach or somebody else
Mm,
who's got more credibility who can help ask for that stuff.
yeah,
Um,
somebody who's trusted.
and who just has the authority, the credibility
Mm,
level,
credibility,
or
credibility.
the positional level that they can say, okay, I'll go talk to them. I'll go,
Absolutely, yeah.
you know,
So for it to make sense.
yeah.
And on that note, Steve, what is the learning concept that you created that you think, I mean, a learning concept that you created in your lifetime that you think is gonna, or you expect that it's gonna last forever?
Well, who knows what's gonna last forever.
What'd you expect? Which
I'm
one?
sure there's an AI Steve out there who's going to take this all over. The one thing that lasts is that, people learn in a certain way. And when people learn in the way that they intuitively know that's the way you learn, you come up with the good stuff. Unfortunately, historically, we haven't done that, and the school method of doing things is not really, when you think about how you actually learn stuff, it's really not that way.
No.
It's not heaping knowledge on you. You learn it differently. I'm surprised a lot of it's lasted this long. I mean, some of the stuff I've done is, 20 years later, people are still using this stuff. Which is difficult because management changes and,
Exactly.
businesses change. And everyone's, I see it did that way. I don't like that one. Do it this other way. And it doesn't mean it makes sense. So it's hard to make things last a long time. I can't think of too many things that have really lasted. A lot of things that, people say they've done that have been around a long time. They're actually doing something different. They just like the title.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, they don't really, they don't really know actually how it works, but it kind of goes through generations of things. Well, for Bloom's taxonomy has been around since the 50s, and people still talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of versions of that, and a lot of people get that wrong, and it's just kind of what happens over time. I got a copy here from 57 on my shelf over here. And it fits some things, and it was a good mouse way to talk about things. But then you talk about all the people who come up through the ranks and don't go through education school, and they've never heard of it.
Mm, true.
So,
do you think that there could be a constant for everybody in any time, was always there in the past, is here now, and is always going to be there in the future? Something that people can always go back to when they are building their learning paths, and because it's a constant.
well, the big thing is to have a disciplined process that you can repeat, that you've tested it out, and always starting from scratch all the time, trying to figure out how do you do things. You really don't have to. There's ways of doing things, and being willing to learn from other people. And some people always have to learn everything themselves the hard way, but it'd be nice if they would actually see, other people made that same mistake. And you probably said it on teams where the new person comes in and says, "I'll tell you what we should do," and you say, "Yeah, but we did that 6 weeks ago and it didn't work." Why don't you pay attention? Ask a question first. So yeah, I'm not sure how much longevity, other than the fact that people are people, and until we change people, they're kind of learn the same way. Maybe when
learning from other people, is this something that we can always lean on?
Learning
from other people.
Yeah, the idea of best practices until we get better drugs or little helmets, with all the AI and everything.
I hope not.
it does make sense to try and figure out what other people have gone through, so you don't have to repeat the same mistakes over again.
Yeah. I love that.
It gets a little frustrating when people are always talking about learning from failure. You don't always have to fail to learn, and you should learn from other people's failures, so you don't have to. You don't have to put your hand on the hot stove. Someone else can tell you don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no value in you learning that yourself and getting scarred for life.